I'm getting to that place where I'm not just removed like the 10-year reunion of high school, but 10-year reunion of college. And then I'm sure it's just going to keep going faster from here. It's like when you're 5 years old, it's like the longest year of your life. You're like, when am I finally going to be six? And I feel like going through, once you hit 30, sure, 40, it's just, I've heard it said kind of like being on a bicycle. It's like you're going 5 miles per hour at 5 years old, and it goes slower. You really remember a lot of it. But once you're like 35 miles per hour or 55 miles, those years like go by, the months, you're like, I can't believe the year's almost over. And I say that to say, now that I'm at this age, I've seen how hard relationships are also compared to when I was five or when I was even in middle school or high school or even college. Like relationship was just so much easier. Before college and before, basically. Relationships become a lot harder because you're on your own a lot more. And I could see how these studies just keep showing that not just the next generation, though especially the next generation, but our nation and people in this world today, in this time in human history, are a lot more lonely than they've ever been. Of course, there are the things like social media that can distract and or numb and ironically connect us, but also distance us, like in the things that matter most. However, I've just been thinking a lot about how would someone who's post college find friends? Because you're in these rhythms when you're especially in, you go to school together, you're on the playground together, you are in the same neighborhood even, so you're bound to you're close. But once you and college is so cool. I mean, high school you start playing sports, and man, some of people's strongest memories of close connection is like I got your back, like is when you kind of do this thing, you're trying to accomplish something together regularly. And so a lot of people's like memory of the closest community you ever been with is sports. And church definitely can be that, hopefully, and after even college sports or fraternities or sororities or just even you're living on campus is better than high school in some ways. Like you become your roommates and it's so fun. And then after that, there's not really camp for older people. I guess they call them men's retreats and women's retreats. Yeah, you're not living in dorms anymore nearby. You don't know your neighbors. You are all driving in maybe 15 minutes away, 30 minutes away. Some people an hour away to be a part of this church. But it's harder to do regular community. And so I just have come to the conclusion we can be like boohoo, just as the way it is, or I'm trying to choose you gotta refuse to do life alone, and you can. I've gone through seasons myself. I remember I'm a super connector kind of guy. Like I realized that at a young age, and there was a year gap where I don't know if I got my emotions or my feelings, but I think I started hearing this voice of like, if you never invited people to things, or you never put something together, say everyone come over, or you're like, let's go play pickleball or spike ball or whatever it is. If you never did that, would anyone invite you to things? Or how long would it take until you got invited? And even thinking about it now, I remember it was an emotional season for me because for that year, the answer was no. A lot of people didn't, and it kind of spoke to me. I took it as, oh, I guess I'm not really wanted, or I'm not really invited, and I think it's just a lie from the enemy. Personally, I had a mentor tell me, no, God has designed some people to be this role, and you're not just that role for you, you're the role for so many people that if you're not doing it, they're just sitting at home alone and they're scrolling or they're watching TV or they're doing not bad things. It's the enemy's plan, in my opinion, towards the next generation. This whole loneliness thing is not to fall into deep sin, but just to fall into the gray. It's not the black or white. It's just if I can just decommission them, because they're all in the gray, just lonely, numbing, distracted, busy, then yeah, that'll work. They're not effective for the kingdom. But you create these meaningful places and these meaningful things. And so in a world that's as divided as we are today, and the loneliness epidemic as strong as it is today, I think leading with especially hospitality is so what is needed. I mean, it really is. I had Nairoop Alphonse, an Indian pastor out in Denver. He said that hospitality is like the one place where the Great Commission and the Great Commandment kind of come together, where it's this missional thing, but it's also the most loving form of missional. It's not getting on a soapbox and preaching the gospel boldly in the streets, which I'm a fan of and I support. But it is a little more fun and easy. I definitely say, I'm gonna make an incredible meal, an incredible dinner or something. We're gonna go all out. We're gonna like light candles. There's something about candles that make it a little more special. We're gonna like say some prayers in the beginning. We're gonna catch up on stories. We're gonna have meaningful conversations. Who doesn't in the church, outside the church, doesn't want that? And so I do think, though I might be gifted at connecting, I think all Christians are called to. You might be the one that has to create the community, even for yourself, and see what God does. But there's a lot of people that would be so willing and wanting to be a part of that kind of community. And so I think us as Christians are the beacon to kind of help with the loneliness epidemic, because we create tables, and we can invite a lot of people to those tables.
For the last couple of years, I've been thinking a lot about the fact that in the beginning, in Genesis, God in perfect creation, sin hadn't entered the world, there wasn't the fall, there was a perfect relationship between God and man. God looked at man alone and said, this is not good. In a perfect world. No brokenness, no, relationship that now needs to be made right. But God looked at man and said, it's not good for man to be alone. And so he created for him a partner. And so then how much more in a broken and hurting fallen world do we need each other? If we needed that in perfection, if that's what we're, I think as Christians, we often feel this angst of like, how do we get back to the garden? Like, how do we get back into that like perfect, right relationship? And because of Jesus, we have that hope, but we're constantly kind of moving towards that as this process. And I think biblically, there is so much to say about how we are wired for connection. We, at our core of how we were designed in perfection, in God's perfect design and his perfect creation, like we were made to connect with one another, with God and with one another. Because again, God and Adam were good. Like there wasn't any disconnect there. But God said, it's not good for you to be alone. So I need to create someone for you who's not exactly like you. He's actually very different from you in a lot of ways. Like you're both made in my image though. So now we're forming this kind of triangle of relationship. You're both made in my image, yet you look different, which is another thought of how is the world filled with millions of people who look and think and process and interact so differently, who recharge differently, who think about information differently, yet we're all made in God's image. And so in my opinion, I think it's God put a unique piece of his heart in each of us to reflect back to the world to show others him. And so what are those ways of connecting that we're each wired in? Are we the connector that creates the gatherings and sends out the invitations and says, hey, we've got a place at the table for you? For me, it's I have such a shepherd's heart, like a little counselor's heart. And so for me, it's what are the thoughtful, intentional questions I can ask to just help somebody feel seen? So finding what your God-given flavor of connection is, and then just lean into it. Lean into it. Know that others may not always meet you exactly there. Kind of what Grant was sharing of, I think we often do the things for others that we secretly, deeply also want for ourselves. But being willing to give ourselves as a gift, like God said that, you needed to be born in your specific place, in your specific family at this specific point in time. He knows what he's doing. We can trust him. Like he's thoughtful, he's strategic, he's intentional. And so what are the things that he's put in you to go and be as you the gift? Like, yes, we have gifts, but you are also the gift. And so how can you go and be really intentional in using that to connect with others? I remember there was a comedian, you may remember the name of him, but he was kind of sharing a pivotal shift in mindset where he would go and, stand-up comedian and he would make the comment of, I would go in and I would feel so nervous because I'd be like, man, I hope they like me. I hope I'm getting laughs. I hope I'm getting reactions from them. I hope they, my jokes land. And it wasn't doing it for him. He was finding himself just feeling really defeated, really anxious, really like, man, what am I doing with my life? And he had a change in perspective of, oh, it's because I'm trying to get something. I'm trying to get laughs. What if I changed my mindset to what if I'm trying to give laughs? And so I think that that could be a really encouraging perspective shift for some of us. Like I know I've had to have that perspective shift in my own life and heart of what do I have to give? And it's from giving that we then receive. It's like that upside down kingdom principle. And so we're made for connection. God's put something really unique in each of us. It's our own kind of flavor that can lead to and build connection. And I think we need to learn how to do healthy conflict. And it is messy. It is a process. We all have different backgrounds, different levels of comfort with conflict. But I think leaning into it, allowing the Holy Spirit to do the work, doing our best to stay humble and saying like, I don't have all the answers. How can I meet my brothers and sisters, people who aren't like me? How can I meet them and work through conflict and not just bounce and go different directions all the time? Like I think there's a really great opportunity in this very felt pain of, man, I feel lonely. It's like, lean into that. Don't let yourself sit in that for too long. Lean into it and say, I'm at such a level of discomfort now. I'm not okay with being here anymore. Like that can actually be a really great place to find yourself. Like do something about it. Go out and say like, okay, I'm gonna do my best to connect with others. I'm gonna do my best to create that connection for other people and just trust that God's got me in the process, that there's gonna be something that happens for me as I'm pouring out, as I'm doing these things, as I'm intentionally looking for ways to connect with other people. Yeah, I think that's a thought. Maybe not the answer, but a thought.